remember my point. I was talking. I was trying to say something, but I don't know. Forgot.
Yeah. You can remember it later when that video's already up and you were like, ah! Welcome back to Life Lessons in Film. Today we're making sense of life through Blue Valentine.
Starring...
Woo-wee! Oh yeah, starring Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams.
It was my second time watching it.
Yeah, my first time.
First time for him. And it hit me just as hard as it did the first time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we should give a shout out to Candy Mandy.
Candy Mandy.
For actually recommending us
that
we watch this movie.
Spot on recommendation.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
1,000,000%. Thank you for me too. Even though I've seen it, I was so excited to see that people who are watching us like the kind of movies that we like.
Yeah.
That feels really good to know that there's a community of people out there who like the kind of stuff we like. So when I saw Blue Valentine, I was like, oh my God. So Candy Mandy, you made our day that day and today. Thank you for the recommendation. Yeah.
This is a synopsis of the film. Young lady going through studying med school, comes from a unpleasant family.
Was she studying med school?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Med school. Originally med school, but then she didn't end up going to being a doctor. She just kind of got like working in a doctor's office. But come from I would call it an abusive household, and then she ends up getting pregnant by another person in med school, I guess.
And then she ends up with this other guy who is a mover. Mm-hmm. They meet when she's visiting her grandmother, and he's helping this older man move into the old age home, and he hasn't finished school, as we find out when they eventually meet the parents. So she gets pregnant by the guy that she was dating before this guy, the mover guy, Ryan Gosling's character. And she decides, firstly she thinks, I'm gonna get an abortion, and then she doesn't, and then
gets right up to the doctor's
office, and it's actually happening, and then she decides to stop, and he was there to help to support her, and decides, you know what, I'm gonna get married. Let's get married. I love you, and they get married.
Like a family.
From the very first day they meet, there's a strong connection. He cannot shake her off, and neither can she, and they end up together. They get married. They have the baby. And fast forward to a couple of years, the kid is like, what? I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10.
She can run.
And so she's working at the doctor's office still with hopes of becoming a doctor one day, and he's painting houses. The relationship has gotten a little bit sour, no longer as fluffy as it was when they were dating. There's a lot of frustration in between the two of them.
It's probably they both come from unhealthy homes, and I think they brought a lot of baggage into it, but it doesn't show at the beginning. Then they cut to a time when that stuff has festered enough that they're not in a great place within the relationship.
Gosh, I don't even know what to say about this movie.
Yeah, it's just
there's so much.
Yeah, like there's that scene where it cuts back to him first coming over to her parents' place for dinner. First time their parents meet him, Ryan Gosling, the guy that's marrying her. I love that. It was so expertly done. Both parents were disapproving because there is just that she's going to hopefully, get through med school and everything, and he hasn't finished high school. And actually kind of reminds me a little bit of Say Anything, where there's the daughter that is, she was valedictorian or something in that movie, and so of course the parents are hoping that she'll achieve very lofty things, and then the boyfriend that she's in love with, is kind of like, I'll just make my own way, we have a spark, and that's what's important, we'll figure it out. And although it's understandable to a degree, the parents are nervous, cautious, but they're also just kind of downright rude to him. They're giving him the 9th degree, interrogating him basically. I wouldn't feel welcome there, the way they were asking him all these questions. He was trying to be nice about it, but you could tell that Michelle Williams' character, the daughter, is also uncomfortable the whole time. She's just very small. I also love the conversation that they have. At one point, they get into a kerfuffle about, her feeling like, are you okay with just painting houses or whatever, it's a job that you drink during, and he's like, yes, I drink in the morning, and, I go do my job and I come back and I get to see you and Frankie. What's the big deal? It works. I've got a
The
method.
best
I've got a
life, he
habit.
says.
Best life, yeah. And then she goes on to talk about, but like, don't you feel like there's some wasted potential on your end that you're not taking advantage of, And then he's kind of like, well, what potential? What do you mean by that,
Yeah.
Which is something that seems to be a character thing for him throughout the movie. Whenever she brings up stuff, he's like, define that. What do you mean? Now, I understand where he wants more clarity, but at the same time, also he gets very defensive and doesn't really let her talk. Anytime he starts to just be like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by being a man? What do you mean by live up to your potential? That was interesting because even though I feel like that's maybe the first time I've really seen a movie have that conversation, I feel like most people have probably had that conversation at one point in their lives when it comes to thinking about untapped potential or what they want to do or what they could be doing, destined to do, turn something that they like. She's like, oh, you're good at everything. You're dancing, drawing, singing, and you don't do any of it, And it's the classic. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, I'm good at stuff, but and it's a tough conversation. But I thought they did it fantastically done.
Yeah,
I'm a bit of a frog in my throat. If you're wondering, that's why I might be a bit off.
So I'm completely raw from the movie. So there's also just quite a lot to digest. And there are just so many things that came up for me. And I'm trying to figure out how to unpack it, I guess sequentially for you guys, because I could be here talking about like going from one place to another. I think the relationship, it kind of reminds me of how some people might look at this relationship and think, well, it's over, right? Like the love has run its course. Whereas for me, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I have known people who say, well, sometimes just love just fades. And I don't necessarily agree. I think that if love was always there at all, really, if love was truly ever there, then it doesn't fade. But the thing about love, I think that it needs to be followed up or backed up by something tangible, like actions, right? Mm-hmm. Because the feeling of love is there. When you meet someone the first time, it's really a whole lot more like, the honeymoon phase where you have a lot of those feelings, and that drives a relationship without anybody actually having or needing to put in the work. Mm-hmm. But once you've made that investment in each other, then comes the hard part of love, mm-hmm. of relationships. And just because relationships are hard doesn't mean that that's a negative thing. The hard part of relationships, I believe, is for both parties acknowledging that both of us are flawed. People are flawed, and people have issues and baggage, and they're messy. And if you want to support the feeling of love, you have to look at yourself and your messiness and how to try as much as possible to clean your mess, like growing and looking into how your mess might contribute to sacrificing the potency of the feeling that you have towards each other, because it does at the end of the day. And if you don't work on your flaws and figure out how you can manage your flaws in a way that's lucrative for your relationship, I think that that's where the main problem in this relationship is. For example, Cindy is always talking about how, how about your potential? Can't you try this, And it is clear to me throughout the movie, because she's like this, she says this throughout the movie, it's clear to me that she's dissatisfied with what he is doing with his life and wants him to do something else that she feels happier with. There's then on his end, he's kind of always looking at, well, Cindy, I don't know.
I mean, I think he looks at her work and he feels like, well, they don't even respect you. They don't seem to even care about you. So, what's necessarily so much better about your job?
Well, yeah, but like I was just thinking about in terms of him and how he sees her as contributing to the issues in the relationship. He doesn't actually, to be fair, I think he doesn't actually call her out directly mm-hmm. on the issues. He calls her out tacitly. Mm-hmm. Things like they go into the room and when they went to the blue room, and he's like...
The motel?
Yeah, the motel. She's like, well, it doesn't have this. It doesn't have that. It doesn't mm-hmm. have this. It doesn't have that. And he's just kind of like, oh, well, it's beautiful, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there are little things like that dotted across the movie. And someone could say, well, he's looking at the glass half full and she's always looking at the glass half empty. And that's like, problematic. So she's the problem here. And I can understand that. But then if you're looking at this through the lens of how much she does
Mm-hmm.
and how much responsibility he places on her shoulder.
Mm.
There's never a time for her to just be at peace. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I feel like if you're living in that perpetual state of carrying so much more of the burden, even though you have a husband who you think that, okay, you're going to like balance things out here, it does become a little bit difficult to just kind of be very, very positive. And I think that's something that he doesn't necessarily see. It doesn't seem like there's any cognition on his end of that reality for her. And I say this because I remember she was sleeping, and that's how the movie starts. She's sleeping. The daughter's hungry. She has to go to school. And instead of letting her sleep in, she works, at a job that's really hectic. He wakes her up in order for her to make breakfast for the kid and to dress the kid for school. And I'm like, why couldn't you do that? It's instant oats. And on top of that, he complains that she's not making the oats right. You know, like, isn't this supposed to be soaking? You soaked it in just water? So I'm assuming he's like, why don't you soak it in milk, right? And then he starts having fun and just kind of has the kid just throw it on the table, out of the bowl, and throw it on the table and eat like dogs or something like that.
And she even says, she's like, well, now I have to take care of 2 kids.
Yeah.
It seems to be a common thing. I think for him, you know, he also grew up without his mom. When he was 10, I think she left, and then he was with his dad, who again had kind of a similar thing where he was working as a janitor, which was probably just a job that he could handle. But who knows? Maybe, you know, that was something that he just kind of was in a rut. But then he was also good at everything musically, he says, which is kind of his position as well. You know, so he might kind of be mirroring his dad's situation, and also the daughter's father's situation. The daughter's father's situation, where the food's never good enough, right? One of the early scenes, he just throws the food at the table because he's just like, eat this. This is okay, fine, enjoy your dinner, but I can't eat this. You know? Yeah. So even though he didn't make any of it, but he still feels the need to critique it and like toss it around. And,
not reflecting on the effort the wife put into it.
Yeah, he was up before her, so he clearly has no problem getting up early. I think he genuinely does care about her and the daughter, Frankie, but at the same time, also very selfish. And who knows, maybe they got in the routine of her always doing breakfast for the kid, even though, and then him never feeling like, oh, you know what, this once, she seems like she really needs to rest. I'll do it this once. I'll take over her role. Yeah. And get Frankie ready for school. But no, that wasn't it during the interview. He was like, I'm just gonna have some fun, have a beer. The other sides of people come out later when they really start getting into their rut or their habit or their routine. So, you know, that's probably where his drinking before work started to come out later, you know? Yeah. And who knows, maybe also, I think if you're a functional addict and you're drinking every day before work, he probably is just a little buzzed. That's why he's like, hey, Frankie, let's just goof around and suck up cereal from the table, because he's like a little buzzed and he's not even really thinking, oh wait, there's responsibilities.
Yeah. So I think that's the interesting thing, right? So he doesn't look at himself and how he's contributing to the issues, and he it's so bad that when she talks about, and she does this so often that you wonder, why doesn't he ever actually sit down and reflect on what does my wife mean by I'm not a man, or because she says that when they're angry and fighting at her job, and she ends up getting fired because of that, which is another irresponsible, selfish thing that he does, where he gets her fired. He doesn't think about, why does my wife keep talking about my potential, and what is it exactly that I do have the potential for. The other way that this could be assessed is sometimes you get into a relationship and then someone wants to change you, right? Like, we've heard of that. We've heard people talk about, well, that's not a good thing. You took me as I was. Why are you now wanting to change me and have me be a different kind of person? I don't feel like this is applicable here, per se.
It's not so her wanting to change him.
Yeah, he's perfect. She's perfectly fine with how he is. It's just a matter of the choices that he's making aren't accommodating the family. They aren't accommodating their marriage. They aren't accommodating the mutual responsibility that their relationship deserves. At this time, I feel like she's the one who has a lot of the responsibility, never mind of taking care of the household, etc., but even of the relationship. And I think that she is very sensitive to the fact of how much this person loves her. She's very much aware of the fact that he loves her and is very grateful for that love. Truly, you can see that. But again, like, that's not enough, right? Every single time she talks about, you have so much potential, why does he asks her all the time, as though he cannot take responsibility for himself. And it just reinforces my feeling that she's the parent. Like, he decides to exist in this perpetual state of childishness with her, and doesn't realize that when she says, you know, be a man, and when she's upset with him. And I think obviously people would be so upset with that and thinking of it in the sense of, oh, okay, here we go, women talking about men being men, that's problematic, you know. But if you think about it, I don't think necessarily she's thinking it from that perspective. She just I want an adult.
Be an equal partner.
I have to figure my own life out. And then on top of that, I have to give you ideas as to how it is you can grow up.
What should I do? What do I have to do?
All the time.
Yeah. And then he gets very angry, physically angry. Either it's punching the one doctor or slamming the wall. And then after that, and it's one of those things where you're like, again, in a way, it's nice that he's able to get so emotional. He gets emotional when their dog dies. He cries over their dog. Cries when he's really he's asking, pleading, begging, what can I do? Just tell me what to do.
And I'll do it. Yeah.
But she's like, oh, why do I have to make all these decisions?
Yeah. Why does she have to make all those decisions, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the theme of the movie. The way that he seems to approach her when he's asking her, what do you want me to do? It seems that he's feeling very invalidated by her. That, okay, that means you're not proud of who I am right now. And so then you keep wanting me to be a different person. That kind of seems like how he responds to this. And again, I totally disagree with that thinking. I think it's more on his end, just again, not this refusal to take responsibility for himself and to really look into what it is that he's doing in his life that is affecting himself and that is affecting his parenting, that is affecting his role as a husband, and that is affecting their relationship.
And they probably fell into that easily enough with, you know, the fact that I think her dad had a similar thing where he was ruder than Ryan Gosling's character, but he still kind of expected his partner and probably his daughter to do a lot more stuff without realizing what they do. So she sinks into that, being used to that role, wanting to please her dad, and she wants to please her husband or just, you know, take on a lot of the load without even thinking about it. Then it gets to a point where I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And it finally explodes. He got used to that. And then that allows him to be in this fun headspace all the time, you know? And he's like, well, you know, like that guy that impregnated you, or your dad, or the kind of sleazy doctor that knows you're married but is still hitting on you. Like, all the other guys, you know, are all shitty like that, you know? And he's really sweet to her most of the time. But you need the sweetness and the playfulness and the responsible part. Yeah,
exactly. I remember I had something in mind to say right now.
I mean, it's quite a thing for him to initially, you know, just say, hey, like, it doesn't bother me that, because she's like, when she's pregnant, she's like, you don't have to do this. You can, like, this is not your responsibility or anything to take care of me. It's my goof up getting pregnant and the guy running off and everything. You don't have any obligation. But he decided to take that on. So, you know, that's I don't know what you'd say, decent, honorable, I suppose. And then it's also kind of interesting because at the beginning, when she runs into the guy, I don't think at that point, the guy that had got her knocked up, I think, years prior, she really struggled to just, like, basically flip the guy off, you know, and be like, get out of my face. She was kind of uncomfortable, but probably still like, oh, you know, and I think and then when she brings that up, Ryan Gosling's character again is feeling insecure, and it's like, why would you bring that guy up? You know, which I get because that's the sleaze that just abandoned you, but at the same time, you know, like, there's clearly a lot of stuff that they both they're keeping from each other.
Yeah, I mean, the guy had also beaten him up, so I feel like there's a lot of too. I feel like he has a grudge there with that guy, fair. And on top of the fact that they both know that he's the father, and I think even though they don't really talk about it that much, I think he probably is aware of. I think the guy is much more accomplished in life. Mm-hmm. I think they're probably both aware of it, and I say this because she talks about, oh well, you know, he was fat, and which he wasn't, but and then he's like, well, why are you even telling me that? Why do you feel like I need to hear that? But he's clearly very insecure. These are things that he doesn't want to acknowledge. He gets very defensive all the time. And even when she's trying to get him to find a different course of career, etc. He doesn't think about, he gets defensive about that too, but it's like, why are you defensive? You would clearly hate your life.
Mm-hmm.
You're drinking at 8 a.m. before you go to work.
Yeah.
I don't know if ever there was an indicator
Yeah.
of the fact that you are displeased with where you are in your life, I would say that that's it. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And he's drunk. Like, I remember when she leaves for work after the Blue Room, he wakes up, she's gone, he's passed out. Yeah. She has to go to work, she gets a call, she goes into work. And what does he do the first thing? He gets the bottle and starts drinking. So there is clearly an issue. Yeah. And he does not address that. Yeah. And so she's always trying to be gentle with him, trying to gently nudge him in the right direction. I remember one of the flashbacks just after he meets the parents, her parents. They're in the bedroom and they're talking, and he's like to her, no one deserves you. You are perfect and I don't even deserve you. And she says, don't say that. It makes me sad. Mm. Why does it make her sad? Because she loves this man. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't care. She doesn't need him to be done with school, which, again, I really want to reinforce this, because when you're looking at this movie and her constant saying you have so much potential, why don't you look into other things? One might think, oh, well, she wants, a certain kind of man, and she's looking down on this guy. I don't think so. Mm. This girl had the opportunity to be with that guy who was in university. Mm-hmm. He had the prospects of him being able to take care of her financially and making a better home. And by better, I mean just like stable in the sense of the finances, right? Like the more materialistic aspects of life, that as much as we don't like to admit it, they are important too. She could have gone for this guy, but she went for this person who she felt this great connection with. And no matter what it was, no matter the fact that he didn't finish high school, and no matter the fact that the dad didn't approve, it didn't matter. She didn't like it when he knocked himself down. And so that's the thing that I was like, no, this girl is not, she really tried, She really tried, and she really tried to support this man that she loves. She really tried to nudge him in the direction where he could find himself and
at least a job where he's happier, doesn't need to drink.
Exactly.
And can maybe not be as tired. I don't know if he's necessarily tired so much, but a job that allows him to then take care of family more as well.
To carve out a life that he can be proud of. He's not proud of himself, and she's aware of that. She won't say it, and she's always trying very careful and always apologizing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. I was trying to say something, but it's clear that I didn't say it the right way and I offended you. I'm really sorry. She says that a lot throughout the movie, but a lot of that I find that it always goes back to him and his own individual insecurities. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I feel like if you go through, when you really watch that movie intricately, you find that a lot of their fights always just a lot of times go back to his own insecurities that he refuses to deal with. And she always tries to kind of skirt around, but she wants to talk about them. But
and he makes it seem like he's the one that wants to talk about these things, but he doesn't actually. He just kind of wants to get into like a shouting match, like kind of like, okay, what do you mean? What do you mean? But doesn't actually want to hear anything.
Yeah.
It's like, well, talk to me. You're always walking away. But at that point, she's like, because there's nothing's entering in. I can say stuff, but it's not gotten through. So there's no point.
Yeah. I think it's a really sad. I really definitely right after the movie I was just like bawling. It was sad because I think that these two people were so good for each other. Yeah. No matter what happened, how the relationship plays out, I think that they were. And I think he was such a beautiful soul, despite the mistakes that he was making. Life is what it is, right? And your past will burden you forever if you're not dealing with it. And he's coming from obviously a very, very broken home. The mom has disappeared, and I don't think he had enough support, because he drops out of high school, and he talks about, it's not cracked out, it's not all it's cracked out to be. And there's clear sadness to when he's talking about his childhood. You can see that this guy really had it rough. He exists in this perpetual state of being a child.
His goofball island is strong, but
and that's charming and all, but it shouldn't be it shouldn't be the only thing, right? I don't remember my point. I was trying to say something, but I don't know, forgot.
Yeah, you can remember it later when that video is already up and you were like, ah!
Yeah, you cut me off though. That's why I forgot.
Just be like, oh wait, no, my point. Fight me.
I can't do that.
Fight me.
Let me see what else
Fight
is
for your
there
point.
that I said. Yeah, this was a lovely movie.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great recommendation.
Yeah.
I'm all for that. Those kinds of movies. Love them. Yeah.
Yeah. What did we miss, Candy Mandy? Please let us know.
Sure.
I definitely would love to hear your thoughts on our thoughts. And yeah, I'd love to hear what your assessment is of this relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a perspective that we missed.
Don't doubt it. Everyone's got their own perspective. That's what's great about art and movies.
Comment down below.
Oh yes, comment down below about your thoughts on our thoughts.
Yeah.
And until next time. That's a wrap. Peace.